morning and welcome to the EA Sports College Football 25 Dynasty. I'd like to go ahead and start this press conference off by welcoming Rose Shakespeare of North Texas and Matthew McGill of Central Michigan. I'd like to welcome you guys. Both of you guys are currently in the top 25. North Texas is looking to make a playoff push as he is in the top 10, and Central Michigan has had a hard season, but they've only had one loss, and they're looking to shake up some stuff here as Central Michigan marches their way into the top. They're right now they're number 17. They're looking to get into the top 10 here with the fallout that is to happen within the next couple of weeks here. The reason why we're having this press conference is because there's been some accusations being floated around here that I'm not necessarily fond of here. I'd like to start off by saying that I run a clean program. I run a clean dynasty. There has been some hiccups. There's been some hiccups in Akron. There's been some mishaps with recruiting time, but we were able to get those figured out. Again, I want to thank Boone Ferogan. I also want to thank Coach Timothy Warren here for LSU for helping me out. There was some hiccups that we had last year before the additions of the new guys here. We were able to get that situated and solved, and now everything seems to be running pretty smooth here. But I did happen to have a pretty good bout with Coach Warren of LSU earlier this year. That did result in a loss for me. I took that pretty hard, even though I had to get back on the good foot because the following week I had a game. I did harbor on that game for a while. Of course, you want to teach your kids and your players to take it 1 week at a time. Internally, there was something wrong with me here. Of course, I always preach to my kids at Virginia Tech to, allow yourself some time to process a loss. But you need to be looking forward, and you need to be marching forward as the next week brings a new opponent. And with that new opponent, you need to focus, and you don't need to be worried about what's going on in the past. But I will say the way that we lost and how we lost did affect me quite a bit. I personally took it as, my guys weren't good enough, especially my offense and my defensive line play. It just didn't seem to be up to par for me, and that really bothered me. That did bother me. However, since that LSU loss that I've received, I have been contacted by Mr. Warren that I personally have done something to his team. And that, I can say, is so not true. We run a clean program over here at Virginia Tech. As an active commissioner, I would like to say I run a clean dynasty over here. We don't do anything like that. We're not for the shenanigans. We don't make 6'4", 248-pound, 98 speed cornerbacks that run and take heads off. We don't do that. We don't do that over here. Okay? Now I understand that you feel that, you have personally been attacked by the governing bodies that make up the rankings. Listen, I have no call in that. I have no say-so in that. That is all computer generated. I just want you to know that I know that you are a hard-working coach. Okay? Again, I didn't like the way I lost. I didn't like how I lost. And I didn't like how dominant your defensive line was against my offensive line. And I didn't like how dominant your offensive line it was in your defensive line. They were both dominant. They had both dominant games. And I was not a fan of that. I had never been pushed around like that from an offensive and a defensive line perspective. That bothered me. We've taken some thumpings here in the last couple of years. We took a thumping to Arkansas. We took a thumping to Tulsa, and what Tulsa did was just absolutely immature. When you have those guys from that Lane Kiffin that Nick Saban tree. Those guys can be unprofessional at times. You think of Kirby Smart and how he, earlier this year in the real college football season, how he felt that Texas they were cheating and how the students were throwing trash on the ground. We don't do that over here at Virginia Tech. We want a clean program again. All I want to say is LSU, we did nothing to your team. As an active commissioner, I have done nothing to your team and will not edit anybody's teams at all because that is not how we do things. We've never done it that way. We're not going to continue to do it that way. Um, Coach Boone Ferogan, you made some comments to me yesterday that I did not necessarily agree with. We talked about this last year during the off season, and I just so happened to miss it. We both collectively missed it. The editing of teams, you want people to play games later in the year so that it matters more. I completely understand where you're coming from. I can't stress that enough. However, in the process of us making the proper changes as a unit, we missed the opportunity to where we can move the scheduling around to where we can move these, knock off a couple of conference games. I think we agreed to knock off 2 conference games so that we can schedule opponents later in the year. But unfortunately, we missed that. We missed that point. We did mention that we would, when off season comes back around, that we will make those adjustments and move forward. So again, you sir, you do have a bout with Arkansas here within the next couple of weeks. That is going to be fun to watch. That was not on purpose. You purposely told me to give you a stronger, more heavy schedule at your request. So I granted you the request. My games were earlier in the year. Of course they were earlier in the year because at the time I could not go and make the adjustments after the off season to remove a couple of those conference games so that I can schedule opponents later in the year. We will address that next year. We will address that in the off season. It is vastly approaching, so I will be ready. And I will be looking for your counsel on how to make those changes so that we can have games later on in the year. Lastly, I would like to talk to Coach Otis Jenkins of TCU. Coach Otis, you have had a interesting career path, okay? You started off in Texas. You ended up in Akron. You went on down south to the Harvard of the South at Vanderbilt, and now you're currently back at TCU, your alma mater. I can't stress how much of a good coach you've been. There's been some shaky things going on. We're not here to bash you. As a commissioner, I'm not here to bash anybody, but you've had an interesting road. As a coach now, I'm taking off my commissioner hat. I'm putting on my coach hat. As a coach, we faced off the first game. We pulled up to Fort Worth, Texas. Got us some barbecue. We stopped in Dallas before we headed over to Fort Worth. Got some Hutchinson's barbecue. Got some extra lean brisket. That was still very, very moist, very, very good. We got us some Texas tornadoes, aka jalapeno poppers with the cream cheese and the bacon and the brisket stuffed in there. Ate that up, real, real good. I don't have a wife, so I couldn't share that with my family, but my family is my team, okay? A lot of these coaches out here got wives, and, they were able to take their wives on, on these excursions prior to games, after they get big wins, and, I wasn't able to do that. So the best thing I could do is treat my team to some barbecue prior to us going into this game. It was a very good game. You're a very tough opponent. There's some things that you threw out there, a couple of wrinkles out there. Had my guys off. As I was making changes, you were able to capitalize on making those adjustments and going from there and scoring on those. But in the end, you still lost. My wide receiver, who I am currently looking forward to being the future, Mr. Paul Luck, got his first touchdown in your stadium. and it was a grand old time. That was one of the bright spots of that win. Mr. Nick Harbor, I can't I can't thank that kid enough. That kid's been very, very dominant this year. He'll probably lead the league in receiving yards, and will probably also have the best receiver in college football award, as he is currently at the top on those nominations. To close out, listen, we got a couple of weeks left here. I personally have two rival games in Virginia and Miami to take care of. Each of those games, I'm going to have massive recruits there. LSU has kind of creeped in on a couple of my recruits. It's cool, no issues. I totally understand it. Everybody's jockeying for positions. Everybody's jockeying to get into the playoff. Some of us, Memphis, I know you're going to the Tostitos Peppermint Cheese Bowl. It's cool. I understand. Listen, it came hard. This was a hard year for you. You lost to Oregon and Rice. Those are two tough teams, but me personally, I can only focus on what I got going on, my kids. Otis, I know you mentioned that you had the best defensive back in the country. I looked at your guy's stats, and he's very impressive. He did have some really good stats here. He has got 12 interceptions, 13 now after the game you played yesterday. 13 interceptions. I did notice that, your longest interception was 98 or 35 yards. Well, Mr. Fleming, Cameron Fleming over here at Georgia Tech, he has 13 interceptions. I'm sorry, 11 interceptions currently. His longest touchdown was 98 yards. Also, Scuggs, he's a phenomenal talent coming in as a freshman. He also has a pick six as well, with a total of 98 yards for an interception. Those guys are up there as well to be voted the best defensive backs in the country. But there's something brewing down there in Arkansas, as Coach Ware is gearing up to be the number one guy in the recruiting. And as you can see over here, let me bring this up real quick. He's currently number one in the country, and the Metcalf boys are two of the best defensive backs in the country here. So take that as you will. There's no slugs. There's no digs or anything like that. Again, number one teams, top teams. Not saying that you're not a top team. You definitely are. But there's a lot of shiners, a lot of superstars out here going pretty hard right now. And, I can't stress anymore how special of a season that we're about to embark. I would like to say this. There's a lot of talk about a couple of coaches being out here on these tarmacs here. Now, I don't necessarily know what Coach Frogren is going to do. I don't want to speak for Coach Frogren at all. But I've heard rumblings about him possibly being on the tarmac here. I know for a fact that I've heard other rumblings of other coaches possibly being on the tarmac here. I've even heard rumblings of champions possibly being on the tarmac. I don't necessarily know. But all I know is build your guys, stay committed to your guys. Unless you're Ferogan, we all know that he's a bit of a wild card. But I don't have anything else to say. I appreciate you guys taking the time out to hear my press conference here. Again, I look forward to talking to anybody. I might have another press conference here within the end of the year here after the playoffs and the national champion has been decided. I'd like to thank you guys for taking your time out. This press conference has been brought to you by the Texas Longhorn Fan Battle Podcast. If you would check that out on YouTube, check us out on Twitter and TikTok. Again, this has been brought to you by the Texas Longhorn Fan Battle Podcast. Again, I am Commissioner TimWayne, and I will see you when I see you. Peace.
Right there. Now on third down, and at the very least, trying to get into a little better field goal position. On third and long, he'll need to push it downfield. He got it in! A walk-off touchdown in overtime!
How about this offense coming out and executing so great, knowing what they needed? They were on defense first. They knew exactly what they needed to do. Come out, they get the throwing touchdown, ends the football game right now. Nice execution by the offense.
And that play right there, David, really encapsulates, I think, the identity of this team. They're going to fight and scratch and claw to the very end to get it done. Great job executing here late in the game to get the win.
That's going to do it for us from here. For Jesse Palmer, David Pollack, I'm Reese Davis, and this has been another presentation of EA Sports College Football.